I'll get into the heart of your application. I think first, Meredith will provide a brief overview of why this application is before the board, and then you will have an opportunity to sort of discuss your project in detail, and then we'll sort of go through the staff report and answer some questions here. So.
Sounds good.
Okay, so this 114 River Street project is here before the Development Review Board for two, well, really one reason. It's because part of the use I determined was a conditional use. There is some, I had to go through the site plan aspects of this, and that's in the staff report, but they're not changing any of the site plan. There's nothing being changed on the outside. So that's sort of in their pro forma because we have to go through it. But the real meat of this is the conditional use. The business is a cannabis cultivation business, and that really, we don't have a specific category that goes into that. It's not just the growing. There's also a drying aspect, and then trimming those plants after they've been dried and harvested, and then putting them in some degree of packaging. It's not going to be sold out of here, so it's not retail. And so trying to figure out where it was going to fit, it really fell into two categories. There's the greenhouse aspect, and I've put the specific definition in the staff report. And then the only other place really to fit the other aspects was in this light manufacturing, where they're processing the plant to a degree, right? Very mildly. There's no special water, there's no special fuel, there's no special waste like there would be for a brewery, right? Where you have all that waste that the sewer system has to figure out how to manage. There's no big special outside equipment. And so the light manufacturing really seemed to be the best place to put this, and really the only place to put it. And under the state statutes, we couldn't just list it all as agriculture. And so that's where I put those. So the light manufacturing is a conditional use, so it has to be here before the board. And in going through that conditional use analysis, we had all the different city departments take a look at it. There was one comment from the police department just saying that they really want to make sure that the business has tight security in place, which makes sense. And applicants have addressed that in the application, but that's one thing to look at. And then really, the only other thing I spotted is maybe a issue for discussion is potential impacts on neighbors from like noise, light, things like that. I have a little bit of a oops in my staff report because I forgot to compile all of those comments into one place in the staff report, and I just sort of put my conclusion. So feel free to discuss that a little more than you might normally, because I forgot to summarize that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
So I guess I'll maybe
you have a further question?
Summarize real quick. Would it be fair to say that the proposed sort of activities don't fall squarely within a listed use?
Correct.
However, by going through the conditional use process, we get to sort of play it safe and do the analysis of like what type of...
So, sort of. So the zoning administrator has the authority to make a determination that a use or uses are enough like uses that we have in our table to fit them in those blocks. Technically, because this is coming before the board, the board can override what I made a determination of and make their own determination separately. If you decided, no, it's not light manufacturing, it's something else that's not even a conditional use, you could basically boot it back to me to issue an administrative permit. But yeah, it's here because I determined that part of it is a conditional use, which requires board approval.
All right, so Jean, you had a question about this. Did your question get answered yet?
Has this been approved by the state?
But your question was about the uses.
Also, well, because I think Meredith clarified, because it's not a listed use. You guys just clarified it right now. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, if you all want to give a sort of overview of your project and what you're envisioning and give us some background here.
Sure. Do you want to jump in so you can kind of lead off with security as well? Or?
Sure.
That would be helpful.
Yeah. It's basically a cultivation space for cannabis, where it'll be trimmed and, dried and trimmed and, packaged for, sale to retail. As far as the, it's pretty straightforward.
Make sure you've got the microphone near you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is that close enough? Okay. And as far as, the concern around security, that's important to us, as well as, state regulators. So there will be video surveillance. There will be access control on all entry points, with individual unique user codes. So we will be able to audit anyone that comes in or out of that building, both visually and by unique identifying number. There will also be an alarm system that is central station monitored, UL listed, 5-diamond rated central station monitoring, basically the pinnacle of central station monitoring, which would contact owners, managers, anyone on the call list if there was an intrusion, as well as dispatch police forces if there was a break-in after hours. So there'll be motion detection, door contacts, any windows would be protected as well. It would be very difficult, if not impossible, to be in that space undetected.
What about from the standpoint of the restaurant, which will be underneath? I mean, how do they get incorporated into this security blanket?
They're not, I would say.
Are there access points or weaker points with that interface between the restaurant and the farm, for lack of a better term?
There are no interconnected spaces. So there's no way to get between those two buildings except by exiting the building and going around to another entrance. So they're really sort of distinct physically. And House of Tang currently is operating as takeout only. There are no guests there, haven't been, and my understanding from the owner is there's no intention to bring that back.
Yeah. Can we throw you guys submitted amended site plan 114 River Street?
Let me put that up.
Put that up. I think it's page. Towards the end of the application.
Is this the parking plan?
Yeah, I just was like to just get an image up there for you guys to sort of describe where things are going to be.
I'm gonna
And
pull it up on the
Okay.
screen, so I just wanted to make sure I was there before I did share screen. That's it. It helps reduce people from being busy.
If I may.
Yep.
Also to address, the question generally around security, it's very important to us that the place is secure, that we're able to control who's in and out of that space, and also understand our own employees that are in there, and just have full transparency and auditing of that process.
Yeah. All right. So this is the building, obviously. So you'll be occupying a portion of the building. Is that
Yes.
correct? So like what portion of the building? Maybe it's on here, but just for clarity, can you?
Yeah. So between the arrows that are not pointed towards a shaded area, yes, between that arrow and that arrow,
Yep.
All the way back, yes. So essentially, that quadrant, is pretty much the space. Yep.
Like the river, the half of the building that's like closest to the river.
More in the middle.
The middle. I guess.
The middle of the
back,
second floor.
middle back, I would say.
Okay.
Yep, on the second floor.
Second floor.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. And so like what sort of equipment, like what's going to be in this area? So like the layout, just so we get an idea of the activity.
The specialty equipment, it's mostly going to be lighting. We'll have tables to catch any runoff water and stuff like that. So it'll all be plumbed. So there's no leaking going to the second floor or to the first floor, of course. But yeah, just lights are going to be the most specialty, equipment in there. It's not going to make noise. No lighting will escape the building. We're going to have every window and every entrance sealed off, so there's no light leaving or entering the building. And as far as noise, the lights don't make any noise, so as far as those kind of impacts, it's going to be very minimal. Smell, they do make charcoal and specialty filters to kind of really reduce and clean the air to kind of take away some of the smell that's going to be exiting the building.
So is this just growing, or is it going to be sort of drying and processing also going on?
Yeah, the whole way of start to finish, basically. We'll be growing the plant and processing it there and packaging. Yeah. Yeah.
Or any, flammable substances. It's really just a natural drying process. So there is no sort of
Should be careful on that.
second layer of processing. That's an entirely different license and application that one would have to file to do that.
As far as the volume of, you would say, but can you just provide a sense of scale for this?
Well, I mean, what about are you thinking with regards to traffic, how often?
No, just
trucks would be leaving, or-
the amount of material coming in and, in and out, like what?
Are you asking for how much product we'll produce?
Yeah.
Annually?
Sure,
Or?
sure.
It's to be determined in the space, but we have some projections. I don't know. I'd have to pull up my numbers. We just kind of reconfigured the whole
So
space.
I guess maybe the easiest way is when a truck comes to pick up the finished product, how frequently and how big is that truck going to be?
Well, we'll be harvesting probably every 2 weeks. So we're going to have rows of lights, and we're going to have it set up so we're at least harvesting probably every 2 weeks, at least one row. So
I would say not a truck.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking, small amounts. We're applying for 1,000 square foot cultivation license.
Yep.
Which is
it's the bottom. It's the
the
smallest.
tier there is. So I would say it's pretty small scale.
So every 2 weeks, a personal vehicle
Yeah.
load would be
Yes.
taken to a wholesaler, retailer, or
retail.
some other location, some other business.
For it to be retail, correct.
Precisely. Yep.
All right.
Joe, Rob, I have a question.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about odor control? It sounds as if you are not going to be having fans, that you're going to be doing passive drying. So is that true? Can you talk about both the drying process and the odor control?
Yes, drying, we will be using fans. We'll be regulating the humidity levels in the atmosphere for that. And as far as smell, yes, anything that's exiting the building, we're going to have going through charcoal filters, and they have other kind of microns filtration for smells and different debris. Just cleans everything up. So we'll use those as we need to really clean up the air.
And so is that something is that detectable outside of the building, or is it not?
It can be, yeah. You can get a whiff. I don't know if there's ever been complaints from the dispensary that's up the road by the trading company.
Nothing since I've been here. I've been here for
Exactly. I
about 4
used to work
years.
there, and every once in a while I'd get a whiff from outside, and those weren't even, the air wasn't even scrubbed that well. So it will be smelt. The smell will be there. I don't think it'll be anything too invasive.
Okay. Great. And also curious just about energy use and how you're approaching that, trying to manage that.
Well, the equipment we're using is all LEDs, which is, 40% more efficient than the HPS and other lights that they had previous. That's one stab we're taking at it. We're going to try to be as efficient as possible. I don't know if you want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I would say as well that the method of cultivation is very low impact on water as far as other methods. So there's not a lot of water waste. Most of it's absorbed into the plant. So we're taking, we care about these things ourselves and are definitely taking those steps. I will say that LED lights are a lot more expensive to buy. But we believe it's the right thing to do, and we encourage anyone getting into this space to make that choice and spend that money because it's the right thing to do.
Oh, It'll reduce your energy costs down the road too.
Exactly.
Also, yeah, all the above.
Thank
Gene
you.
had-
That's
Gene
helpful.
has a question too, when you're there.
Welcome.
Gene, go ahead.
Abby just asked what I was going to inquire about. I'm just curious how many LED lights in the space.
The way we mapped it out, it's going to be right around 40 to 45 lights.
Okay.
So I think I'd like to sort of move back to going through make sure we get the issues here in the staff report.
Sure.
It's a great overview of the questions and whatnot. And so I guess just poll members of the board, we had a little bit of discussion about, this being the use being required to have conditional use in this district. I very much agree with the staff report on that determination. Any other thoughts from board members on, how we got here on that determination? Okay, I'm seeing nods, yes, that we're good there. So we talked a little bit about the security, which, was sort of a comment from the police department. Do board members feel like they got enough information on the, questions about security to, maybe feel that the police department's concerns are addressed? Do we have any more to do on that?
I think you explained it very clearly. Just to confirm, since we're sort of on that topic of the staff report, so this is an entirely sort of internet-based system that you're using, or do you anticipate having any sort of security staff there as well, or this is all it's all the remote censoring and access point monitoring?
Well, when staff are present, there'll be staff there.
Okay.
But there will always be access control. So even if staff is there, it's still a locked, place. You can't just walk in, even if people are there.
Yeah.
So control from that standpoint. And again, always, video monitored, 24-hour recording, as well as, unique user code entrance for authorized people. In terms of the monitoring type, it would be a dual path. It would likely be communicating over cellular as well as IP. So there would be two ways for the alarm system to signal out any issue. One of those being cellular, where there's no wire to cut. There is no way to disable that. So I feel that it's a really strong plan.
So, yeah, I think you've discussed the security, and I'm satisfied, and I feel confident with your plan. I'm just wondering if we need to require as a condition for something sort of like detailed, sort of about security.
Well, the state issues certain perimeters that we have to follow through the application process. So, and I'm guessing, just given our background, that we'll probably overstep and probably implement more regulations that are being required.
Yeah, I'm not sure as we need to do that necessarily. It's not the DRB's evaluation of it is to make sure that the project is not going to have a disproportionate or unreasonable burden on the city's ability to provide police, fire protection, and ambulance service.
Yeah.
Given the,
Sure.
not that they have the highest degree of security possible, but that they're not creating
Sure.
an undue issue where there's going to be an undue number of police calls, which,
Sure.
they
They have their own system.
have their own
Yeah.
pretty robust system.
Got it.
Does that work?
That makes sense to me. Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
if it's helpful, I will comment that I find that the state of Vermont, the Cannabis Control Board's security requirements are, more than adequate, but not overreaching. I mean, I think they did a really good job. of finding that right balance of what's needed and not, over regulating and providing, just an expensive burden on, business owners that are just starting up. So I think they've done a really good job with their requirements of making sure that those needs are met as a requirement for licensure. So
I guess in this, I'm just thinking in the same way, if we get another one of these, it's just nice to have an easy box to check to say like, okay, they were, like we say, new development, it's like they're gonna have to get a wastewater permit, it's like a.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, yeah, so, but what do you?
I'm just wondering if we should say the condition is that, they obtain appropriate approvals, from the Vermont Cannabis Control Board.
I mean, you can, but we actually got rid of we have our thing where if they get that state permit, we say, okay, you've automatically met our standards. We no longer have you have to get that one because they ran into problems with that.
Sure.
I mean, you could probably ask for a copy to be put in the file.
No, I'm good. I'm just
Okay.
curious. I'm curious of, just, this is new.
questions.
Yeah.
It's completely new.
Trying to find parallel standards to, make sure
Right.
that,
I mean, what we're doing this evening is precedent setting.
Yeah.
yes.
And so far it seems like it's a pretty low key kind of exercise,
Sure.
which is good.
Yeah, that's the idea.
We're going to see more of these, I'm certain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. And we want to make sure that, what we're doing is a good precedent for, moving forward. Like, sure.
What's next, Kevin? I'm lost. We got security. That seems to be the number one issue.
Security.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to just go through the, do you want to just go through the conditional use standards at this point? I mean, like I said, the site plan stuff is all basically not applicable because they're not making any
I
changes.
mean, we've taken a dive into this. No alarm bells are ringing. I think it makes sense at this point to go through the criteria. I'm sure there's going to be a couple of, some things we want to look at in a little bit further depth, but I see no reason not to proceed to that.
All right. So page 10 of the staff report is, sort of listed out the conditional use standards. First is section 3302, which is the community facilities and utilities. We talked a lot about security. I think we're good there. From the information you provided, I think that when it comes to water and sewer, we're not seeing much of a change from what's currently happening at the site. So not much of an issue there. Section 3303 is the next one, which is traffic. I think we talked about the loading and the volume. I'm satisfied there. So maybe the last part to, about that is there a little bit of discussion about parking spaces. Was there not?
Yeah. Well, they meet
Meet the criteria.
Yeah, they totally meet the criteria. That was one of the few things in the general standards that had to be evaluated. And there's more than enough parking in that parking lot, existing parking spaces, to meet all the needs of all of the existing businesses, including one that's listed as existing, but I guess is not actually doing business anymore. So yeah, they're fine for the parking needs.
Yeah, so plenty of parking, traffic issues. We talked about security. The character of the neighborhood. If you guys want to talk about that one.
I don't think there's any residents within, sight or smell or anything really of what we'll be doing. So
I think you have to go across
the street
in order to continue.
Correct.
Across and left or right and up and away.
Very much commercial.
It's mostly commercial there. It is mixed,
Especially
but
on that
it's,
side, yeah.
yeah, on that side, it's all commercial.
Commercial
Slope
and-
style is over there. Vermont Security's on the other side. Insurance, Noel Johnson, and, it's pretty commercial over there. And I also think the building is, pretty nondescript. We're not going to have a sign up there saying anything. I mean, this is about as public as it's going to get, what we're doing right now, for that space. So, I think it should have very little impact. If I was to make a comment about anything that the city might do, and on that line that you were saying, like to add on precedents and things to think about, would be lighting,
Right.
like
On the street.
no, like efficient lighting.
Oh,
If the city has any efficiency standards,
We
we
do.
That,
We do for
that
the
would be
outside.
wise,
Yeah,
'cause-
no, there are actually standards for exterior lighting. If you were wanting to do exterior lighting, trust me, I'd be asking for all sorts of information from you. But you didn't propose any changes, so I did not dig into it.
And lighting is an issue with a number of applications along
Okay.
that strip.
Mhm.
So, if lighting is part of the plan that has not been addressed here, we should get that on the table.
Yeah, nothing at this point. And actually, the lighting I was referring to was the use of the lighting in the cultivation.
Just the LED growing light.
So from an energy.
Yeah, from an energy perspective, the
Perspective.
city might, think about that as something of a requirement if you're allowed to do that.
Yeah.
To make sure that, LED is the method that's used, because it is so much more efficient. There are cultivators that want to use different types that are way more, energy intensive.
Yeah, we don't usually get into stuff inside the building
Yeah.
for the zoning. That's building permit.
Okay.
So we try to not dig too deep inside people's buildings.
Yeah, and maybe that's an overreach, I don't know, but yeah, that would just be the only thing that came into mind.
Yeah.
That would be just a positive impact.
I know efficiency Vermont gives out.
Rebates,
Money,
yeah.
rebate.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, I think that also the costs usually sort of benefits you for making that choice.
Yeah.
Long term,
Yeah.
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 If you're short on money up front, not so much.
They're so much more efficient than the alternatives. that,
Totally.
Your payback is probably not that. Of
Yeah, agreed.
course, I don't know what the price of the initial unit is, but
Right.
I know how efficient they are and
Yeah.
how quickly you recoup your investment.
Yeah.
So the next,
Economics are on our side,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
so the next issue under character of the neighborhood, sort of an area about architectural compatibility, or like you said, not even lighting, no changes to the exterior. So I don't see that as an issue. So yards, lot coverage, landscaping, also were no changes to the exterior. Okay there. Character of the neighborhood in general, I think we're seeing like no flags.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything from Abby or Jean or Joe. Everybody's
Yeah. Thank you for
gotta
keeping an eye
mute
on that.
and chill.
All right, sounds good. I would, I think, entertain a motion to sort of move this meeting along to the next item. Anyone has any?
So the whole move to close the public hearing
Public
and
hearing.
move
Yep.
to deliberative session
move to
after after the close of the public meeting.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
And with that being so elegantly stated by you, Meredith, I will make that motion.
Okay.
Second it.
Second by Jean, I believe. Kevin, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Joe? Yes. Jean?
Yes.
And Rob votes yes. That unanimously is approved to take this up at the close of this public meeting, and the public hearing is closed on this application.
So just as a translation,
Okay.
that means that the board isn't going to take any more testimony from anybody on your application. After we finish all the other public aspects of the meeting, the next application, the board will have a deliberative session privately with nobody present, no Zoom, no nothing, to make the decision, hopefully tonight, I'm assuming tonight. And then we'll have 45 days to get you a written decision, aiming to do that much, much sooner, as long as everything happens tonight.
Great.
Okay,
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, 2-minute break.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So it's been requested for a 2-minute recess here. So we'll just round up and convene at 7:45. 45. Call this meeting back to order. And our next order of business on the agenda is for 149 Main Street. And applicant is OM Fisher Home Incorporated. And who will be taking the lead on presenting this application this evening?
Well, we've got a whole bunch of people if you want to look to who to swear in.
Yeah, yes, no, absolutely. I just was trying to identify who the
Lead person?
lead person would be, sort of going through the application.
Well, Dawn's on as the applicant, Dawn Pulowski,
Okay.
so she's on tonight. We have Brian Lane Carnes from DeWolf Engineering, who often speaks a lot on the projects. And then there's the architecture team, Tom Bachman, Dan Wheeler. And then when we get to, I mean, there's, it depends on what part you're talking about.
Thank you for the transition. It's a little harder to see and identify who everyone is when they're
I'll
not here in
angle.
the room. Thank you. All right, so first thing we have to do on this is we have to swear anybody in that's going to speak on this project, which, in many ways, how do we best
Yep.
do this?
Well, yep. So, Catherine Gordon, I think you were on about this application. So maybe if you can turn on your video, so that we can just see you. So we've got Diane Sofrin and Lou Friedland, Dan Hassan, James Finley Sherris, Brian Lane Carnes, Don Pulowski, Tom Bachman, Dan Wheeler. We're all planning to either talk on this application or at least be here and involved in this application and potentially talk. So we should probably swear all of them in.
Okay.
And Meredith, don't forget we have James Finley Shearer, our landscape architect here.
I think I said that, but maybe I said it too fast.
Okay. Dan Hassan is the development consultant to OM Fisher. He may or may not speak. We'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Well, anyone that might possibly provide testimony tonight, would you please, raise your right hand to be sworn in as a witness? And do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Awesome.
All righty. Thank you very much. So at this point, Meredith, would you give us a very brief overview before turning it over to the applicant for their presentation?
Will do. So I'm going to keep this as brief as I can. This is an application for an addition at 149 Main Street on the back of the current Gary residence, which in addition to being a residence, it's a historic building. And so there's some complications with that the applicant can speak to, but those aren't really complications that the board needs to worry about. So this triggered major site plan because of the size of the addition. So that is the number one main reason that this is before the board. And the number two is because there is a request for a waiver, a very slight waiver, a quarter of a foot of the left setback distance. The site is constrained in part by the current site design because of that historic building and the current access driveway location all up at the front of the parcel. So there's been some jiggering around in the back, and that's one reason they're requesting that left setback waiver. There's some other points that are raised in the staff report for discussion. Are stormwater, some landscaping points, and lighting. So there's a fair bit to talk about, but the major things are that setback waiver, and that this has to go through the board for major site plan. So you're going to want to make sure you touch on all of those site plan sections and at least have a brief discussion on each of them.
Absolutely. Okay. Someone from the applicant like to give an overview of the project and maybe address any items that you may feel like you can prior to the board having some questions.
Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Pulowski, the Executive Director. and of Owen Fisher Home, and we're very excited to present this project to support the community with a great need of continuing care for the folks with cognitive loss. We want to continue our mission and vision that we have started over 103 years ago. We've been working on this project since 2016, and we have a great team on this project, and I'm going to pass it over to Brian because he has done a majority of the work for this permit.
Great, thank you, Dawn. Meredith, is it possible for me to share my screen so I can point and talk at the same time?
You should, you want to share your screen, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
go right ahead. I usually have that available.
It seems to be working.
Yep, it is.
Alrighty.
Hopefully I've picked the right one. Is everyone seeing the overall site plan?
Yes, looks
Yes.
like it.
Like, big old hand here. So this is the proposed site plan for the project. The existing Gary residence is with this sort of diagonal hatching here. Main Street's over here. The existing driveway is to the south of the Gary residence here. If anyone's been down the sidewalk here, probably one of the most noticeable things here are some of these very beautiful large trees right along the frontage along here, which are all being preserved as part of the project. So I'm just going to give a general site overview, and then I'm going to hit a couple of things that Meredith mentioned in terms of items that were highlighted in the staff report. So one of the things we're doing to sort of improve the site access as much as we can, given the existing configuration of the lot. Right now, when you come in, the parking is against the south edge of the parking lot. So we're flipping that around to the north edge, so you have a straight shot to come in and out, which will improve, any deliveries that need to come in and out of here, and also access for emergency vehicles without having to come up and around the parking spaces. Honestly, given what we're working with, that's about all we can do on this particular, and because it's in the UC3 district, it's actually exempt from minimum parking requirements. Although I do acknowledge that the rules say that if we provide parking, it has to meet the other requirements for parking in the regulations. This grade hatched area here is the proposed addition, 11,300 square foot footprint, single story. The majority of it's a single story. This portion of the building right here is both a connector, an entryway, and then a connecting ramp, because the finished floor elevation of this new building is up quite a bit above grade in order to meet the requirements of the floodplain regulations. So in order to have an at-grade accessible entrance, we need a fair amount of ramp inside then to get up to the grade of the actual residential portion of the building. There's also this portion right here will be a new stair tower. The existing egress from the back of the Gary residence is an old iron fire escape. It's inadequate for current building code and certainly for this particular use. So one of the goals of the project was to improve the egress from the existing Gary residence. So all 3 floors of the Gary residence will have access to the new stair tower and elevator. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Tom, but I think elevator in the stair tower.
Okay, Brian, there's no elevator.
No elevator, I'm sorry, stair tower only.
There is an existing elevator in the current Gary residence that serves those 3 floors, but there's no elevator associated with this project.
Okay, thank you. Egress stairway.
Yes.
Couple other site highlights. We're proposing a maintenance storage building at this location, screened dumpsters at the back of the parking lot. There will be a concrete sidewalk walking path around it. And there's 2 sort of patio areas. This is like a memory garden, and this will be sort of screened from the parking lot, a kind of little private outdoor gathering area for the residents. And then an open patio with some granite benches out in the back here. So that's the general site overview. And let me just get a couple of the things from the staff report that Meredith had called out before The first being the setback waiver we're requesting. So it's a little hard to see on this plan, but on the left side of the building here, this dashed line is the 10-foot side setback. So you can see right at this corner of the building here, basically the face of the building just clips over the setback. It's less than the 3-inch waiver that we're requesting, quarter of a foot, 3 inches. But the reason we're requesting the 3-inch waiver is because, this building has to relate to an existing building. And there's always a little bit of challenges in getting that layout to work. So we may, exact location of the building may be like an inch or two different by the time it gets laid out in the field, based on the, relationship to the existing building. So more than anything, we're requesting that waiver just to give us the flexibility to have, if the building moves a couple of inches to the north during construction, that we're not creating a problem with the setback. But, even at 9.75 feet instead of 10 feet, it's going to be, really not noticeable to anyone who's in the neighborhood. It's kind of behind, all of this is behind the existing building. So the main view of the property from the public vantage points is going to remain the historic residence and these large trees from the front. And then secondarily, this patio, and then tertiary, the building back here where we're requesting a setback waiver. So we believe it has minimal impact. We've addressed the actual waiver criteria in the application. And if the board has questions, I'm happy to address that some more. I think the site lighting question is pretty easy to address. So we didn't have, let me just quickly bring up the site lighting plan. The site lighting plan inadvertently didn't include all of the cut sheets for all the fixtures. But essentially, almost all of the lighting is either building mounted or mounted on the underside of pergolas that are proposed at the two patios. So in the building mounted lights, there's 3 types listed here, SW1 through 4. So SW1, 2, and 4 are all the same. And we did have a cut sheet on there. They're downcast, fully shielded LED lights. SW3 is actually the same thing, only smaller. So here's the cut sheet. We've updated this legend compared to what was submitted. But this is the cut sheet for the larger SW1, 2, and 4 lights. So this gives you a sense of the distribution, vertically of the lighting from that fixture. This is the SW3 fixture, which, as I mentioned, is really the same, only smaller than the other two. So that hopefully addresses the question regarding lighting. And obviously we can go through the lighting in more detail if there's more questions. And I think the other major thing that Meredith mentioned, well, let me talk about one thing that Meredith didn't mention. Down to the next site plan. So this is the utility plan for the project. There's this line right here, this gray line with the DE notation. There's an existing brick arch culvert that the city owns that runs through the property here. And Meredith had pointed out in the staff report that DPW has some concern about the impacts of the project on this culvert. So I just wanted to update the board that we did have a meeting with Kurt Monica last week to discuss this, and the applicant is definitely willing to coordinate with DPW to make sure that this culvert gets rehabilitated during the construction of the project. So we talked to Kurt about how to work that into the plans, how to make that happen with the bidding and the contracting, and we're on our way in terms of coordinating that effort with the city so those can happen at the same time. And then I think the other one was landscaping, which James, if I could ask you to just address Meredith's comments on landscaping from the staff report, and then I think we'd open it up to questions from the board.
And I'm sorry about the errant sentence. I meant to say this at the beginning. There is I have a little mea culpa on page 15 of the staff report, and then anybody who picked up a hard copy here, I've actually crossed it out. The first paragraph at the top of page 15, the last sentence is actually from an old staff report that somehow in all of my proofreading I missed. But it's clearly from a different application. So
Yep.
there's no frontage on Granite Shed Lane for this project.
Got it.
All you, James.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through the landscape design as we have it. As we've discussed, this building is a beautiful example of historic downtown Montpelier architecture. We also find that the landscape that fronts that building up onto Main Street is also wonderful, and we are not going to mess with it at all. As you come down the access and drive towards the east, we've created a sort of a drop-off sequence with a couple of granite chunk seating benches. From there, as you move west, we go past the fenced-in memory garden, which you won't see, but that would be a space for residents to sit outside and enjoy the perennials and shrubs that we have in there. Moving further east to the north of the parking lot, we have called for a series of grasses and then also Boston ivy to be trained up on the building. That will, the idea for that is to cover the extended foundation due to the floodplain level we have to be up at. To the south there, you can see the existing silver maples. There are two, almost three, essentially one is a giant double trunk silver maple. They are huge, beautiful trees and will cast ample shade down on the parking lot. From there, as you head further east, you can see the cedar screen that is existing. It is our intention to keep this cedar screen, and we will be walking the cedars with an arborist and come up with a management plan and with the contractor and work through whatever needs to happen to preserve these as best we can. Any cedar that is harmed will be replaced by construction. If you've had a chance to look at it, it is essentially a cedar hedge that has grown up. So it's not a series of individual tree plantings. There's almost like 90 trunks coming up there. So we feel very confident, or I feel confident, that we'll be able to maintain that screening and in fact, enhance it with fertilization and other steps as advised by the arborist. As you can see, just to the west of that cedar row, there's a sidewalk or a path that we have circumnavigating the building for residents to walk along. As you come west on that path, north of the building, you'll come to the sort of our area of open patio, bluestone paving, granite chunk seat benches, and shade-tolerant perennials. We think this will be a really beautiful asset for the residents, and we are also above our required landscaping minimum quite easily. So I think we covered that as well. So I think that covers the landscape.
Alrighty. Excellent presentation. I think you guys have, seems like you guys have done this before.
Once or twice.
What do you think? Public comment first, or we go through the stuff?
I would go public comment first.
Okay.
Could we take off the share screen, Brian or James? Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're gonna, I guess, entertain our first public comment session here. Who is in the queue to go first?
Diane and Lou, so Diane Sofrin and Lou Friedland have been on since very beginning. Catherine, I see you have your hand up. Do you need to get off shortly? Diane and Lou have been on since about 20 minutes before the meeting started.
I can wait.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Hi. Am I on?
Yes, you are. If you could just make sure to reintroduce yourselves and what property you have.
Sure. So I'm Diane Sofrin.
And I'm Lou Friedland, and we live at 24 St. Paul Street, pretty much directly behind the Gary home.
We have a little diagram that's right up against the hedges.
And the dumpsters.
And the dumpsters.
Thank you.
Okay. So, so shall I just repeat the things that I wrote to you, Meredith?
Well, the board has read your email, and they've also had I summarized some of your comments. So I don't know if you have to read the whole thing. You can summarize them and maybe if you have any specific questions or items that you want the board to address or things you want answered from the applicant, just clarify those.
Okay, so,
Hold on a
I've got
second.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay, sorry.
Technical glitch here. We're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so there were basically four questions that we had or issues that we wanted to bring up. We did take a pretty good look at the various documents and drawings, the site plans and the renderings. So the first thing was that there is a reference to a construction fence along the line of disturbance. And we're assuming, and would like I suppose, to have a clarification. We assume that that's going to be temporary, being put up during the time of construction. And obviously it should be on the Gary Home side of the Cedars to protect the Cedars from the construction, as well as protecting us as well on being on the other side of the Cedars. So there was that issue of the construction fence that we just like those clarifications on. And then we did notice in the landscape plan, but not in the other architectural plans, that there was a reference to a proposed 6-foot IPE fence and dumpster enclosure. So the dumpster enclosure we understand, and that was clarified at that meeting of the design advisory board, that was going to go around the entire dumpster, and that's it. Great. But the plan of the landscaping shows that the 6-foot high fence is going to be running all along the Cedars on our side of the Cedars. In the rendering, the fence cuts through our house and goes up against one of the corners. And so it does not appear in any of the other renderings. And so we wanted clarification about the location, or whether in fact there is going to be a 6-foot high fence running along the Cedars. It really can't be on our side because it will completely make the back of our house inaccessible to us if we want to have it painted or any kind of work being done on our side of the line. So we did want some clarification about that. So one reason that this idea of a 6-foot fence immediately up against our house doesn't work is that we can't get to the back of our house. And the other is that the whole point of having this very nice cedar natural fence, which I'm very appreciative that it's going to be maintained and taken care of, won't be of any use to us if we can't see it, if there's a 6-foot fence on our side of it. So that was probably the thing that was of most concern to us. And we would like a clarification about that. And we're registering that we really don't want that on our side of the cedar fence.
And it was only in the landscape plan. It did not appear anywhere else.
You just hold on one. Oh,
yes.
We are.
Yep. So
It's hard to tell who was talking here.
that was Lou. That was Lou
Got
and
it.
Diane.
Yep.
Together.
Perfect. Okay, so Dawn or Brian, do you guys have any comments thus far on, or quick answers?
Yeah, this is James, landscape architect. I'm going to admit there's an error on that drawing. I have that fence is drawn on your setback line, and it should have been drawn on the property line. That is a mistake on my end. So the fence will absolutely not be on your property.
If you're going to have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to also speak to the construction fence. That is a temporary fence for tree protection, and that'll come down.
So the temporary fence will be on your side of the Cedars, yes. I'm assuming.
Yes.
And the only question about a 6-foot fence being on your side, well, first of all, the maintenance building is going to be directly behind our house. So I don't know where you would have a cedar fence, a 6-foot fence on your side of the Cedars. And then also, how could you maintain the cedars if you've got a 6-foot fence running along your side of them?
So what traditionally happens is when we are designing properties and we're considering a fence on a property, what happens is we show that fence on the property line, and then we have to get onto site and with the subcontractor and actually find out exactly where that fence will go. Okay. So there's the process would be we would meet up there and lay out that fence and make sure it wasn't in any way impacting the cedars. And we had room to fit it between the maintenance shed and so forth. In terms of maintaining the cedars, you know, what would happen there would be primarily root injections, and that would probably want to happen on both sides of the property line, both sides of the cedars, so those roots are properly taken care of. And any sort of trimming or arbor work would be done before the fence went up. And then, you know, that sort of work wouldn't happen for a long time and could happen with ladders. So I think we could maintain the cedars and have that fence. But I do agree, the fence will not be on your property.
Okay, so is it understood then that the fence will not be on our side of the cedars? Well, not necessarily on our property. I mean, obviously it won't be on our property, but it won't be on our side of the cedars. It will be on the Gary home side of the cedars.
My understanding is those cedars, and as I was saying, they're a hedge, so the trunks kind of there's about a 4-foot width, even more, where those trunks are kind of coming up. And my understanding is that straddles the property line. So we would have to do it on our side of the cedar.
There's actually a double row of them behind most of our house. Yeah. So you know, you've got hedging. You know, there's maybe about a 3-foot space in between the two of them.
Yeah. More or less. Yeah. That's right. So I just went actually there this morning just to double check because I hadn't looked closely since the snow had started melting, and it seemed, you know, very difficult to put a fence between those two rows in any sort of meaningful way.
So it sounds like you got several questions here, and it sounds like you got some answers and clarification.
We weren't quite finished though.
Okay.
So just a reminder, you're having a good conversation, which is great. Usually we try and direct the conversation to the board instead of you guys having a conversation with each other.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
We did have one more question though.
Yeah.
We can direct it to the board.
Yes.
Well, because currently as the cedar hedge goes right now, it's very, very tall, but actually quite thin. I mean, we can easily see from our kitchen, we see right through them, and we see the dumpsters, and we see the parking lot. And it might be that the maintenance of them should be that they are shorter, but more dense. And I think that that's pretty important to us, is to have a nice green, dense hedge between us. That's quite important.
It's a little bit easier to understand that when you're on our end because we're so close. When you look at it from the Gary home side, from some distance, it looks great. Yeah. But it is really lush up at the top, and as Lou said, very spare down at the bottom, mostly because of the snow that kept being pushed up against the base of the hedges in the winter. But we understand that will change because of the building that will be there, so that's fine. The only other question that we had, what do you want to ask about that? It seemed like on the various drawings, the architectural drawings, it seemed like from how we read it, and maybe we didn't read it correctly, the pad for the dumpsters was actually a little bit over the
end of Montpelier is the setback over the Gary home setback.
On the end of, not on our line, but at the corner of, well, where the dumpster is going to be. And so we just thought someone could clarify that. The only reason we bring it up is, you know, we just don't want things to be inadvertently damaging whatever foliage there is in that corner.
think we so understand the concern here. Meredith has a quick response to that, that question.
Yep. So, just a general note is that the dumpster enclosure doesn't have to be within those setback lines, right? Those setback lines are for the primary building.
Okay.
And so I think that was a space issue, and a condition of the permit is going to be the maintenance of those cedar hedges. And, I think it looks like there's gonna be enough room there to accommodate both of those.
Okay.
And with the dumpsters being enclosed, there's gonna be less of that shifting around also with the fence there. So I don't think you'll have as much issues with that.
Okay,
fine.
thank you. Thank you very much. We'll mute ourselves now.
Okay.
Could I just make a response on the fence? I'd like to just back up for a second and clarify a couple of things.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just to sort of back up to our thinking on the fence is, we, as much as our intent is to maintain the cedars, the intent of having that fence was to provide some additional screening between the project and the neighboring properties on the other side of the cedars. So the placement of the fence is right on the property line, which probably effectively, when you're standing there, is on the neighboring property side of the cedars, if you were going to say it's one side or the other. But because the intention was to provide additional screening, the applicant is willing to remove the fence from the project if it's preferable to the neighbors to have the cedars as screening rather than having the cedars and a fence as screening. So I just wanted to clarify those couple.
Yeah, I don't think
is required by the regulations, the nice side of the fence. So it's a natural wood fence. It's ipe wood, which you may be familiar from like decking and such.
Yep.
Finished side of the fence would be facing the adjoining properties if it was included in the project.
Well,
So the board will review this, based on the landscaping and screening requirements. I think we got enough information to move forward. And I think that it seems like the major concerns were addressed here. So I think we got to move things along. And Catherine Gordon, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Are we talking about just the landscaping stuff now, or are we talking about the whole building?
Anything on the application that you want to talk about, your concerns?
Okay. I guess I had a concern because we're part of the historic district also. And if you look at the historic thing, historically, we've not had a building abutting our property, and we're, like the only historic building. I'm at 15 Brown Street, so we're directly behind the cedars on the other side, on your left as you're facing the back of the property. My main concern is that it's a one-story building, but in looking at it in reference to the Gary home itself, it looks like a two-story building because of the floodplain. So I think that is going to make a big difference to our views from our upstairs windows and downstairs windows, although we see the hedge, which is good, but the upstairs windows. And then also I have concerns, which I brought at the other informal meeting, about the noise, because it sounds like the mechanics of the building are going to be right at our property line. So that was a concern, probably more so than the lighting, because it looks like the light addressed pretty carefully there. And then also just looking at the plans, like if you look out our back door, the gazebo is actually pretty close to the property line, but the building you're purporting is going to be even closer to the property line. And I don't see, actually, honestly, how you're going to fit a hedgerow, a sidewalk, and the building itself in the allotted area, because the hedgerow right now is pretty wide on its own. But I'm just concerned about just the closeness of the building to the property line. And then also, I'm glad you addressed the water runoff issue. One thing, we've been in our house almost 30 years, and they redid the road on Brown Street a long time ago, but when they did it, it was not, my understanding is it was not done correctly, so that when there is a heavy rain, the drain in front of our house actually backs up and runs on either side of our home and lands somewhere. I don't even know where it lands, but I'm assuming it lands on Gary home land. So my concern is not only for your building, but our building, if everything's pushed back toward the property line even further. So I really think that something needs to be looked at, either correcting things in front of our house or making sure that things are not shifted in the building of the proposed project, because I think that really is going to impact the water situation for both properties. And you guys may be above the floodplain, but we're on it. And your building, it's going to, you know, could cause other erosion stuff at your foundation, even if you're above the floodplain. And that's also my concern, is just that it's raising everything up so that it's very tall, even though it's a one-story building, supposedly. And then I guess that's mainly it, but I guess that's mainly my concerns, so.
So my understanding is the building, proximity of the building to the property line and the runoff are your two major concerns that you would like us to dig in and review.
Proximity and I mean, if our building's a historic building, their building's a historic building, and then you have this big new structure,
yep.
I feel like I'm getting penalized as a historic building when I have limitations on what I'm able to do. But yet the surroundings can be impacted, however, you know,
yep.
like things right up to the edge.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you for your comments. Perspective will certainly help us in our review. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak on this application? Yes, Catherine.
Hold on one second.
Yep.
So Diane just wanted to have one thing to say in response to what Brian had talked about,
okay.
about potentially removing the fence.
Yep.
Diane, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So since we have the ability to say that we'd like to waive that fence, we wanted to say that we want to waive that fence. So we do not want
the cedar hedge.
We just want to have the natural cedar hedge nice and dense behind us. We don't want any 6-foot IPE fence behind us at all.
Yep. So
not, anywhere. No. Since it sounded like that was our prerogative as the abutting homeowners to waive that, I wanted to make it clear that we want to waive that.
I don't know if it's your prerogative to waive it, but Brian had said that might be an option. So it's ultimately the DRB's decision on how to deal with that. But it's good to get on the record that if you have the option, you don't want the fence there behind your house.
Right. It did seem like that the two different people were saying slightly different things. So, the landscaper was saying that wasn't going to be there, and as I understood it, and then the other gentleman said that it was, and we could, and it sounded like it was there more for us than for them, and that we could opt out. So,
well, your comment from your perspective on what would be appropriate screening is helpful for the DRB to sort of look at the evidence and what's been proposed to figure out what best fits the regulations. And we also understand the applicant's willing to amend things based on some of your comments. So I think we got the information to move on here.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this application before we dive into the review?
Kathy and Caitlin were both on just viewing, so board members can go back to questions if they had them.
Is that it from the standpoint of the public comment?
Unless you had something you wanted to say. Okay.
Okay.
So let's go through the
site plan.
criteria.
Yes.
And
I guess before the first item with the staff part was this issue, a little bit of discussion on the setback waiver, which, I don't think have any issue with approving. I'm curious whether 0.25 is really what you want to be asking for, or whether we don't, you can go up to 5 feet. I would hate to be back here if something, if something changes or we have it on the record that's so specified.
Yeah, except that a 5-foot waiver is a lot.
No, I'm not saying
more.
This is just an E that encroaches on
Sure.
the setback. And yeah, it's 4 inches. But I think if say in the future the roof was replaced and it moved an inch either direction, I don't know if we really want to get into that level of detail.
Yeah, I guess my point was that, maybe we round it to a foot or something like that, but that's the choice of the applicant, not us. That was just sort of a comment that I had, is that you're asking for a little bit of a buffer, and then maybe we want to, do that, but we can move on if that's not something that needs to be discussed.
Just a reminder, we have the application that's before us.
That's
We aren't
correct, yes.
required to, we aren't being
That's
asked
correct.
to improve upon the application for them.
Thank you, Meredith.
She'll keep us straight.
Sometimes, when I don't take you on a long and winding road first.
You do a good job.
Okay, so the site plan criteria is where we're at. I think we addressed maybe these issues, but we'll make sure that we,
Site plan or just the,
general standards.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Did you want to go into the general standards? That's where the stormwater stuff is, but.
Right. So, but we have.
You're starting to lose.
I'm sorry to lose it, yes. We have like a 3-minute recess here to read.
We're gonna, you have to call it.
Yeah, can we have like a 5-minute recess while we chart the rest of this meeting, to try and make it a little more efficient? Sorry for the disorganization.
So just a quick 5-minute recess.
Yep, see you in 5 minutes. Thank you. You know, we would like to discuss, one is drainage and one is the design review criteria. Did board members get a chance to review the sort of minutes from the design review committee?
Yep, so in your packet were the design review recommendation forms, and I had meant to include the design review minutes, but I circulated those via email as well, just to make sure you had a clear understanding of all the items that the design review committee discussed and went through and approved during their process. They reviewed pretty much everything on the exterior, including the landscaping, all the fencing, the screening for the mechanicals on the roof, the specifics of the finishes on the side of the building. All of those things were looked at by the design review committee and approved. Their only recommendation, which is something that the board can include as a condition of approval if it wishes, is the requirement that the cedar hedges be maintained as adequate screening.
Perfect. Now, does the applicant accept the recommendations and suggestions of the design review committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item is just talking a little bit about the drainage on the site. So if you could just provide a quick summary of where the water's flowing, and you know, I think we do have a concern about you know, some water flowing over to Brown Street. So maybe if you could just talk a little bit about that and get that sorted out.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially all along the north and east sides of the building, there is a French drain strip there. So right now, most of the drainage comes either down from the adjacent building to the north. I think that perhaps some of it does then drain to the east currently, but we're going to intercept all that surface drainage in a French drain on the far side of the sidewalk. And that'll be directed to the municipal drainage system. All the building roof is internally drained, so that will go directly to the underground stormwater system. And in the parking lot, there's a couple of catch basins. And also, as noted in the application, then this is sort of a different topic, but the DPW requested that we control the peak discharge from the 25-year storm so as not to overwhelm downstream drainage facilities that are owned by the city. So we provided underground stormwater storage so that, and we provided modeling that shows that we're not, we're in fact decreasing the peak discharge in the 25-year storm to the city's drainage facilities.
Board members have any questions on drainage?
Just make a comment that I think the proposed application has an improvement to the existing water handling.
Absolutely. And yeah, we thank your coordination with the city on that that pipe. I think that's, you know, it's going to be a great addition to the infrastructure that we are at within the city. So thank you. So that's all I have. Is there any additional comments? Applicant have any closing comments here before we move this meeting along?
Satisfied, I think that concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
Any comments from the board?
Joe, Abby, Jean, any outstanding questions?
I'm here. No, it's an exceptional presentation. Thank you.
Then,
Then I'll entertain a motion.
so I'll make the motion to adjourn the public hearing on this application, and upon the adjournment of the board's business for the evening, move to deliberative session for discussion and potential action.
So motion by Kevin,
Second.
second by Jean. Kevin, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Gene?
Yes.
And Rob votes yes. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, there is no other business except for that our next meeting is scheduled for April 18th. Yes, Meredith?
That is the next regularly scheduled meeting if we had an application, but because none of tonight's applications were continued, we actually will not have an April 18th meeting, which unless the board for some reason wants one for training.
I think we're good. I think we're good on
So
that,
then
too.
the next meeting would be Monday, May 2nd.
Monday, May 2nd.
Alrighty, Monday, May 2nd.
Okie dokie. Boy, time flies.
And I'll send around an email with our deliberative session link in a couple minutes. I got so wrapped up in tonight's meeting, I didn't set one up.
All right, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Abby.
Second.
Motion by Abby, second by Catherine. Kevin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Gene? Rob votes yes. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your patience this evening, and we'll see you soon.